The humid embrace of an October evening in Jacksonville, Florida, 1998, always carried a specific scent, a mix of salt air from the Atlantic, the faint sweetness of jasmine, and the distant, metallic tang of the scent. Johns River, for Sarah Jenkins, a 17-year-old senior at Fletcher High School, it was the smell of home, of Friday night lights, and the boundless promise of a future she was meticulously planning. Sarah was, by all accounts, a beacon of youthful exuberance. With a cascade of sun-kissed blonde hair and a smile that could disarm anyone, she was a popular cheerleader, a diligent student, and a beloved daughter. Her days were a whirlwind. Early morning cheer practice on the dewy fields of Fletcher, classes where she excelled in English and biology. An afternoon shift at the Ocean Breeze Diner, a local haunt on Atlantic Boulevard, where she served up burgers and milkshakes with an infectious charm, and evenings often spent studying, catching a movie with her steady boyfriend, Mark, or simply unwinding with her family in their modest, two-story home in Jacksonville Beach. Sarah lived a life that felt authentically American in the late 90s. Her bedroom walls were plastered with posters of bands like Green Day and Goo Goo Dolls, alongside framed photos of her and her cheer squad, their faces beaming with camaraderie. Her clunky desktop computer, a relic by today's standards, hummed as she typed out college application essays, dreaming of attending the University of Florida, a goal her parents, Martha and David, wholeheartedly supported. They had sacrificed much, David working long hours as a mechanic and Martha as a school administrator, to ensure Sarah and her younger brother, Tom, had every opportunity. They were a close-knit family, their evenings punctuated by Martha's home-cooked meals and lively discussions around the dinner table. Sarah's most pressing concern was perfecting her college essays and maybe, just maybe, convincing Mark to take their relationship to the next level after graduation. Life for Sarah Jenkins was vibrant, predictable, and full of the sweet anticipation of adulthood. The first subtle tremor in this otherwise serene existence came a few weeks before her disappearance. Sarah mentioned to her best friend Emily about a persistent, silver-gray sedan she'd noticed a few times, once near the diner, another time near her school, and once even parked a few blocks from her home. Probably just a coincidence, she'd shrugged, dismissing the unease that flickered in her eyes. Jack's Beach is small, everyone drives the same few models. Emily had agreed, and the fleeting mention was quickly forgotten amidst discussions of the upcoming homecoming dance. A week later, Sarah found a single, wilted rose tucked under the windshield wiper of her beat-up 1989 Honda Civic. There was no note. It struck her as odd, slightly creepy, but also a bit romantic in a bizarre, anonymous way. She told Mark, who just laughed, joking about a secret admirer. Sarah didn't mention it to her parents, not wanting to worry them. These were not warning signs that screamed danger. They were whispers easily rationalized away, a faint dissonant chord in the symphony of her ordinary life. Friday, October 23, 1998, began like any other Friday. Sarah attended school, aced a pop quiz in history, and during her lunch break, finalized plans with Emily for a movie night later that evening. After school, she headed straight to cheer practice, the Florida sun still beating down, casting long shadows across the field. She then went to her shift at the Ocean Breeze Diner, clocking out around 9:30 p.m. Her plan was to grab her uniform for Saturday's game from the dry cleaner just 2 blocks away, then head home to study for a chemistry test before Emily came over. Mark was out with his own friends, having wished her a good night with a quick call from a payphone after the game. Sarah called her mom from the diner's landline phone around 9:40 p.m., confirming her plans. "I'll be home by 10, Mom, don't wait up." Martha recalled the conversation vividly later, a casual exchange, unremarkable in every way. It was the last time she would ever hear her daughter's voice. Sarah walked out of the brightly lit diner, the crisp night air a welcome change from the kitchen's warmth. She waved goodbye to a couple of coworkers, her cheerleading bag slung over her shoulder, a spring in her step. A few moments later, a busboy from the diner, a shy kid named Alex, saw her walking towards the dry cleaner, disappearing into the shadows cast by the large oak trees lining the street. He was the last known person to see Sarah Jenkins alive and well. By 10:30 p.m., Martha Jenkins began to feel a familiar pang of maternal concern. Sarah was rarely late. She tried Sarah's pager, then the dry cleaner's number, but got no answer. She told David, who, with his typical calm demeanor, suggested Sarah might have just popped over to Emily's house without calling. But as minutes stretched into an hour, and then another, the initial calm morphed into annoying unease. Calls to Emily, then Mark, confirmed Sarah wasn't with them. Their answers were laced with confusion, then growing alarm. At 1 a.m., David Jenkins called the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. The initial investigation was, as often is the case with missing young adults, cautious. The JSO dispatcher, and then the patrol officer who first arrived at the Jenkins home, seemed to lean towards the runaway theory. "Teenagers do this sometimes, Mr. Jenkins," the officer explained, his voice devoid of urgency. "Give it 24-48 hours, she'll probably turn up." This casual dismissal ignited a frantic fury in Martha and David. "Sarah is not a runaway," Martha insisted, tears streaming down her face. "She would never do this to us. She has plans, she has her whole life here." They described Sarah's meticulous nature, her college aspirations, her close family ties. Slowly, reluctantly, JSO upgraded her status from missing person to endangered missing. The first few days were a blur of agonizing uncertainty. Flyers with Sarah's smiling face, her cheerleading photo, a bright red bow in her hair began to blanket every lamppost, every storefront window in Jacksonville Beach. Martha and David, along with Emily, Mark, and dozens of Sarah's friends and neighbors, organized search parties, combing through the scrub brush and undeveloped lots near the diner and dry cleaner, their hearts hammering with a desperate blend of hope and dread. Detective Robert Miller, a seasoned JSO detective with a weary but sharp gaze, was assigned to the case. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but something about the Jenkins' unwavering certainty and Sarah's established routine made him push past the initial runaway assumption faster than usual. A crucial piece of evidence surfaced the following morning. Sarah's Honda Civic was found abandoned in the parking lot of a deserted mini-mall about 3 miles from the diner, closer to the Intracoastal Waterway. The car was locked, a subtle detail that immediately discounted the runaway theory. Runaways usually left in their cars or left them unlocked for easy retrieval. Inside, her cheerleading bag was neatly stowed in the backseat, further evidence she hadn't planned to be gone. But her purse, containing her wallet, keys, and pager, was nowhere to be found. The dry cleaner, it turned out, had been closed for the night when she left the diner. Sarah had called her mom to confirm picking up the uniform, but she might have remembered the dry cleaner was closed after the call. Or perhaps she was abducted on her way there. Detective Miller and his team meticulously processed the car, dusting for prints, searching for any telltale signs of a struggle. The interior was clean, almost too clean. No forced entry, no obvious signs of a struggle. It suggested either she knew her abductor, or she was taken by surprise outside the vehicle and the car was moved later. Witness interviews began. Emily, Mark, Sarah's co-workers at the Ocean Breeze, her teachers, neighbors. Everyone offered fragments, pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit. No one remembered seeing anything unusual on the night of her disappearance. Alex, the busboy, reiterated seeing her walk towards the dry cleaner, but nothing more. The silver-gray sedan Sarah had mentioned was a dead-end, too common a vehicle, no distinct identifying features. The community rallied around the Jenkins family. Vigils were held, prayers offered, and donations poured in to fund a private investigator. The local news channels ran continuous segments, showing Sarah's smiling face, Martha and David's tear-ravaged countenances pleading for information. The weight of public scrutiny, coupled with the crushing agony of not knowing, was almost unbearable for the Jenkins. Each phone call, each knock on the door, sent their hearts soaring with a fleeting hope, only to be dashed by another dead end, another well-meaning but ultimately unhelpful tip. Mark, Sarah's boyfriend, struggled immensely, haunted by guilt, replaying every conversation, every argument, searching for a sign he might have missed. He was questioned extensively by Miller, cleared, but the shadow of suspicion, however slight, lingered in the town's whispers. As weeks bled into months, the initial flurry of activity slowed. The search parties thinned, the news reports became less frequent, eventually relegating Sarah's disappearance to the archives of unsolved cases. Detective Miller, however, refused to let it go. Sarah Jenkins became his white whale, a case that gnawed at him, invading his dreams. He kept her file on his desk, a constant reminder. He pored over it, revisiting interviews, re-examining the scant evidence, hoping a new perspective, a fresh set of eyes, might reveal something he'd missed. But the leads had dried up. No ransom demands, no credible sightings, no new forensic breakthroughs. The humid Florida climate, while beautiful, was a nightmare for preserving outdoor evidence. Any trace Sarah might have left, or that her abductor might have left, had likely been washed away by a torrential downpour, baked by the relentless sun, or simply overgrown by the rampant subtropical vegetation. The Jenkins family became a silent testament to enduring grief. Tom, Sarah's younger brother, grew withdrawn, his childhood innocence shattered. Martha and David's marriage, once solid, buckled under the immense strain. Their home, once filled with laughter, became a mausoleum of memories, Sarah's room preserved exactly as she had left it. Every anniversary of her disappearance was a public and private agony, a reminder of the gaping hole in their lives. The pain became a constant companion, dulling the edges of joy, coloring every interaction. Mark, unable to stay in Jacksonville Beach, eventually moved away to Orlando, seeking a fresh start, though the memory of Sarah never truly faded. The case of Sarah Jenkins, a vibrant cheerleader, became another cold file in JSO's overflowing cabinets, a story whispered in hushed tones by the community, a cautionary tale. 8 years crawled by. It was the scorching summer of 2006. Jacksonville had grown, sprawling outwards, swallowing up vast tracts of undeveloped land for new residential and commercial projects. In a remote, wooded area near the old Cecil Field Naval Air Station, a tract slated for new housing development was undergoing land clearing. A bulldozer operator clearing a particularly dense patch of brush and palmetto struck something hard and unyielding that wasn't rock. He stopped his machine, got out, and cautiously investigated. What he found, partially buried beneath years of leaf litter and tangled roots, was undeniably human. The call came into JSO, and Detective Miller, now grayer, a little heavier, but with the same tenacious spirit, felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He'd seen too many of these. Still, a sliver of desperate hope always flickered. The scene was painstakingly processed. Forensic anthropologists confirmed the remains belonged to a young female, estimated to be between 16 and 18 years old at the time of death. Dental records were expedited. The confirmation came quickly, hitting the Jenkins family with a fresh wave of grief, but also, paradoxically, a strange, haunting sense of relief. It was Sarah. After 8 long years, Sarah had come home. Among the scattered bones, amidst the soil and decaying organic matter, forensic technicians found 2 crucial items that had withstood the elements. One was a small, silver locket Sarah had always worn, a gift from her grandmother. Its intricate engravings were still discernible. The other, found clutched in what remained of her hand bones, was a badly corroded, but still identifiable, class ring. The ring bore the insignia of Terry Parker High School, a rival Jacksonville school, and the year 1997. This was the this that surfaced, the unexpected, tangible link that finally provided a direction. The discovery reignited the investigation with a ferocity that had been absent for years. Detective Miller, now the lead detective on the reactivated Sarah Jenkins case, felt a renewed purpose. With Sarah's remains, medical examiners found evidence of blunt force trauma to the skull and several fractured ribs, indicating a violent struggle. The initial runaway theory now seemed a cruel joke. The class ring from Terry Parker High School, however, was the real game changer. Miller, working with a new generation of younger, tech-savvy detectives, began the painstaking process of identifying every male student who graduated from Terry Parker in 1997. They cross-referenced these names with any minor criminal infractions in Duval County around 1998, focusing on individuals with a history of violence or erratic behavior, however minor. The list was long, but one name stood out: Jeremy Thorne. Thorne, then 19, had a record of minor assaults and disorderly conduct in the late 90s, but nothing that had ever linked him to Sarah Jenkins or the Beaches area. He'd graduated from Terry Parker in 97, and the description of his class ring, according to old yearbook photos and school records, matched the one found with Sarah's remains. Furthermore, Thorne had worked sporadically at various odd jobs around Jacksonville in 98, including a short stint as a delivery driver for a local pizzeria that occasionally serviced the Ocean Breeze Diner area. His name had never come up in the initial investigation, as he had no direct connection to Sarah's known circle. Detective Miller and his team tracked Jeremy Thorne down. He was now 27, living a quiet life in a small apartment complex in Arlington, working as a warehouse supervisor. He had a clean record since his early 20s. When 2 JSO detectives arrived at his door, Thorne was outwardly calm but visibly uneasy. He agreed to come to the station for questioning, maintaining his innocence, claiming he had no idea who Sarah Jenkins was. Miller laid out the new evidence, Sarah's remains, the specific injuries, and then the corroded class ring. He placed a photograph of the ring on the table between them. Thorne's composure visibly cracked. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic in their depths. That's mine," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "I lost that thing years ago, probably fell out of my pocket somewhere." Miller leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "It didn't just fall out somewhere, Mr. Thorne. It was found in Sarah Jenkins' hand, in her grave." Miller then presented the vastly improved DNA evidence available in 2006. A small, degraded skin sample found under Sarah's fingernails, preserved thanks to being in direct contact with bone for 8 years, now yielded a partial DNA profile. When compared to Thorne's DNA, the match was conclusive. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Thorne finally broke. The confession was chillingly mundane. He admitted to seeing Sarah leave the diner, recognizing her from her cheerleading days. He'd admired her from afar. He'd followed her in his beat-up silver-gray sedan, the same one Sarah had noticed. He'd approached her near the dry cleaner, initially just wanting to talk, perhaps to impress her. But Sarah had politely, firmly rejected his advances. When she tried to walk away, he had grabbed her. The confrontation escalated, a brief, brutal struggle in the darkness. In a moment of panic and rage, he had struck her, then smothered her to silence her screams. He'd then driven her car a few blocks away, and later that night, driven Sarah's body to the remote, undeveloped land near Cecil Field, burying her shallowly, hoping she would never be found. He hadn't meant for it to happen, he claimed, just lost control. He remembered his class ring slipping off his finger during the struggle, but in his terror, he hadn't dared to go back for it. The news of the arrest and confession rocked Jacksonville. A collective gasp of sorrow and relief swept through the community. For Martha and David Jenkins, the truth was a crushing blow, confirming their worst fears, but it also offered a profound, if painful, sense of closure. Their daughter Sarah would finally receive justice. The memorial service was held near the ocean she loved, a place where her laughter once echoed. Mark returned, his face etched with 8 years of unspoken grief, standing beside the Jenkins family. Detective Miller, attending the service, watched the waves, a silent testament to the enduring power of human resilience and the relentless pursuit of justice, even when the clock runs out and then, inexplicably, restarts. Sarah Jenkins, the bright cheerleader, was gone, but her memory, and the story of how her truth finally surfaced from the Florida soil, would forever be etched into the heart of Jacksonville.